we're in the art game. We're not in necessarily the exact color recreation game, like making it look exactly how you see it in your eye. We're creating pieces of art. We're creating something to draw you in and to make you feel, to take you back to a moment. And so color manipulation and editing is just a tool to help you do that.
Hello everyone and welcome to Canon Conversations, the brand new podcast where I sit down with some of the top creators in the industry so that you can become a better photographer. As this is our first episode, I should introduce myself. My name is Ben Journay. I'm a videographer and podcaster, and I've been working with Canon for a little while now. I really want this show to feel like a mentorship program in your pocket. Each episode is going to be focused on a specific topic that relates to an area of expertise of our guest, and I'll do my best as we go along to highlight the takeaways so that you can learn as fast as possible. We'll be covering a wide range of skills and interests, so there'll be something for everyone, whether you're an aspiring amateur or a working professional. On today's intermediate to advanced level show, we're going to be going deep on color theory and color processing with Chasewild's Cameron Thorp. Cam, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey Ben, it's great to be here and excited to chat to you.
I'm sure most people will be familiar with the name Chasewild. It's quite synonymous in the wedding photography world. But for those at home who aren't as clued into the wedding photography industry, why don't you give us a bit of a rundown on you, James, Chasewild, and your sort of whole brand?
Yeah, so Chasewild is a wedding photography brand here in New Zealand, and we shoot around the world as well. It's between myself and James Broadbent, a good friend of mine. We started about 6-7 years ago, and we shoot around New Zealand. We teach workshops, we sell presets, and we love to have conversations like this and help new people who are coming up into the industry. It's a really fun time to be a part of the wedding photography industry. So I guess Chasewild started as a partnership between James and myself. We actually met in university studying something completely different from photography, and we actually fell in love with photography sort of around the same time, actually through Instagram, funnily enough. Like I had never picked up a camera before, but it wasn't until Instagram and I could take photos on my iPhone 3GS at the time, I think it was, that I started really getting into taking beautiful photos and trying to edit the colors and do good compositions. And it was through that I discovered photography. And then I discovered, beautiful wedding photography online as well, and that whole world. And it really just captured me. And I dove in head first, like online, just learning as much as I could and consuming as much as I could of what was online at the time. And that was really the beginnings of my photography journey. And about a year later, James was also on a similar journey, and we were, helping each other out. We were good friends. We were shooting together all the time, and we decided that, two is going to be better than one, and we could build a stronger brand together. So we started Chasewild, and it's been a wild ride and a fun ride, and we're stoked to be here.
Nice, man. And sort of, I guess one of the most dramatic aspects of your work is the sort of the aesthetic, and it's a really unique aesthetic, and people might describe it as like moody and things like that. How did you land on that particular style of photography?
I think it was a bit of a natural progression, actually. Like, we were quite intentional when we first started our brand about wanting to be international photographers and going to different exciting locations. And I think part of the aesthetic kind of just came from shooting in those locations. Like, before we even booked weddings in these places, we went to those places ourselves and organized little shoots with people that we had just met in those countries, and which is a great way to get content in places you want to shoot. But we took them out into mountains and Iceland and the Faroe Islands and these kinds of places, which kind of have that aesthetic to them already. The I guess more overcast, cloudy, misty, foggy kind of weather. And that when we started doing that, we were like, man, we loved to do that. It was fun, and the images like had a really capturing feeling about them, and we just loved shooting couples in that kind of weather and in those kind of environments. So that kind of became a bit of a part of our aesthetic naturally. And then we like to just shoot and just have fun with our couples as well. So I guess like natural moments, like in these beautiful places, going on adventures, that kind of became our aesthetic and kind of became our mantra. And and then a bunch of like aesthetic things kind of develop over time and naturally progress just as you shoot and as you're influenced by different art that you're looking at and different things that you're looking at. And so I think we developed quite a bold aesthetic that images had a lot of pop and a bit of contrast in a certain way to them. Our images always had kind of, we always went for creamy skin tones that looked a little bit dreamy and maybe a little bit surreal. And we had deep shadows that really like enhanced that kind of, I guess you said, moody feeling, that foggy feeling. And deep shadows, that also helped our couples like jump off the page and be the real center of attention inside, I guess, an amazing landscape.
In terms of your like inspirations and landing on that style, like, what were some of the things you were drawing from? Like this, I can see, especially with those like rich blacks and sort of creamy skin tones, like sort of, it makes me think of like old Technicolor films and stuff. What are some of the inspirations that you were drawing on to find that look?
Yeah, sure. I guess it's some of that stuff, like looking at some old film photographers. But I think one of the big influences that I remember of the kind of photographers we were looking at and the kind of art I was looking at the time was a lot of street photographers who were actually shooting in cities and shooting in the sun and making it work by enhancing the contrast that the sun gave and using light and shadows in that kind of way. And they would always place like their subject in the sun, obviously, and then the rest of the image would be dark or have that shadow part to it. And I guess I started to apply that to how we shot in all kinds of light. And so, there was one photographer that does this amazingly is Alex Webb. He's a maestro. I think he's like one of the Magnum shooters, and he's got an amazing photography book out that shows that technique just so beautifully. Like he's always placing his subject, I guess, as the brightest point in the frame, and using shadows to really like enhance where you look on the page. Alex Webb was definitely an influence. And we took a few cues from photographers like that for sure.
And I guess along with like sort of using light and tone to hone in and focus on your subject, I noticed that your images have a really tight color palette, which again like keeps your eye focused. There's nothing distracting in terms of overriding colors and stuff. So can you explain a little bit about how you think about controlling the color palette in your shots, like as you're shooting and as you're editing and stuff?
I think a cohesive look is really important to us. I guess the first thing to sort of mention about that is that in the wedding photography game, not everything we shoot is exactly with the same kind of colors as our Instagram feed sort of displays. And a lot of how it ends up looking on the website and on Instagram is a lot to do with curation of how you curate your portfolio and what you choose to shoot and which photos that you put next to each other. So it's not like every wedding we're shooting is like, got beautiful like dark grass that's not super green, or we're on mountaintops with clouds and shooting at sunset every single time. But that's the stuff that we love and we want to be known for, and we want our couples to book us for. So that's the stuff that we show. But I think you can plan things on the day and help educate your couples to try and make the environment as good as you can to shoot with the kind of light that you want and to shoot with the kind of colors that you want. So that stuff is really important to us, and we're always thinking about it on the wedding day. So like I guess even just planning locations, that's a huge part when we go location scouting, is trying to find the kind of colors and the kind of light that are going to work to enable us to get that color palette, I guess. And so yeah, there's certain things that we try and avoid. We don't show a lot of super blue sky all the time or super green highlighted grass. I know in New Zealand we have highlighted green grass just everywhere, and so we would choose a paddock full of dry grass every time over a green paddock. So little choices like that can really help get your color palette tight.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It is a combination of, like, obviously the curation. You're not showing like every photograph out to the world. You are picking and choosing and curating what your brand sort of represents and what you want it to represent. But at the same time, you are conscious of those decisions when you are out in the field. You're not looking for you're aware of what color the grass is and like what that's going to mean in terms of like the hierarchy of what our eyes see. Like our eyes are going to focus on highlighted green grass compared to soft skin tones, and it's going to distract in an image. So yeah, definitely.
And then I guess the third aspect to that is also in the editing process, and keeping those same thoughts in mind, like what you just said about the hierarchy of what your eye is going to look at. And so if you do have a shot that has a part of it that has some kind of distracting, like blue sky or green grass, that you don't want to be a part of your look and you don't want to be a part of your image, then there's certain things you can do to brush away the saturation or to warm up that certain area of the photo to help draw your eye to where you want it to be. So yeah, it's a combination of all those three aspects, I think.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll definitely go deeper on the post processing and Lightroom side of things later on in the show. But when did you sort of along your photographic journey start noticing colors and wanting to control them in your compositions? Because I feel like color is something in photography that people come late in the game to. Like people start off like in their photographic journey experimenting with like focal lengths, and then with like depth of field, and then eventually with light. And I feel like color kind of comes in last. And so like when along your photographic journey did you start realizing that color could be controlled in the same way that lenses and focal ranges and things like that could?
Yeah, great question, man. I think it's that way for a reason. I think that color comes a little bit later down the photographic journey for a reason, because I think it takes a little bit of experience. It takes a lot of doing the thing, like going out and shooting and coming back and putting it in Lightroom and remembering what kind of light you shot it in order to get that kind of color. So I think it does take a long time to really know and create a connection between what you're shooting and then what you're being able to edit, and the hard thing, I think, for photographers at the beginning who just want to make an image that looks a certain way, or they just want to make an image that looks like this amazing photographer that they know, like they might be able to do it like, one out of, on the off chance when everything's perfect, but being able to create something over and over again consistently with the same kind of consistent aesthetic, it just is going to take a little bit of time. And I think there are some things that you can do to work at that in Lightroom. And I think, yeah, it just takes work. It doesn't just happen by error. And so really thinking through your different shoots and then your different edits is going to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And so before we dive into sort of post-processing side of things, is there any sort of heuristics, rules of thumb that you've picked up along the way when you're out shooting that helps you think about color in terms of like the hierarchy of things, like beyond like that example of say the bright green grass versus a more of a brown grass? Are there other sorts of things that you have almost become second nature to you now that you're thinking when you're out in the field about controlling color?
Yeah, I think for me, the main thing that I'm thinking about that I know is going to affect my colors is the quality of light that I'm shooting in, because I think for me, the number one thing that I want to get right with my colors before anything else is skin tone, and getting that kind of creamy skin tone that Chasewild is it's definitely part of our aesthetic. And so it definitely comes from the way that I see light and shoot all the time. And so for me, the key thing is having my subject, having my couple as the brightest point in the image. And so I'm always looking for a light that has a bit of movement from light to dark. So whether that's like an open shade where I can place them closer to where the light source is, but the background is going to be a bit darker. So I'm always on the lookout for a spot like that, because I know that when the soft light is coming in and it's going to hit my subject and the background is darker, I can darken that background even more, make my subject pop, and I know that light is going to have a certain quality to it, that I can get those rich, yellowy, creamy skin tones that aren't going to seem super saturated in orange, but they're just going to seem nice and soft. So finding light that softly moves from light to dark, and then placing my couple in the middle of that movement is what I'm looking for when I'm shooting, to get the right colors. Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah. So I guess to dive into post-processing, the post-processing side of things now, you guys have your sort of presets available on your website and stuff. They've become incredibly popular. They've got quite a distinct fingerprint on them, where I can see when a photographer has taken a Chasewild preset and adapted it to themselves. And I think a lot of it comes from those creamy skin tones that you've somehow developed. I don't know what kind of wizardry you're doing, but like how did you figure out that, like the skin tone in particular, that kind of creamy quality to the skin tones? How did you figure that out in Lightroom?
Yeah, so one thing that I think is a bit of a principle when it comes to editing in Lightroom is learning the balance between all the different elements and all the different tools that are at your disposal. Because there is not just like one solution to a problem, like, oh, my skin tones are really dead, let's put the orange saturation up. Like, that's one solution, but it needs to be balanced out by all of the other solutions. So in our presets, we've put our presets out there, and a lot of people were interested in how we got our look, and I can give away a few of the secrets of the preset and what happens in it to kind of demonstrate that balancing thing. So one of the things that we do in order to get the creamy skin tones as well is because our images. So I'll go back to how we shoot first. Because our images have the brightest point is the subject, is our couple. That's the highlights of the image, right? That's the skin tones. So the skin tones are the highlights. So then in Lightroom, we're putting a certain blue into the highlights. And so a lot of times it's the clouds and the sky and our couple that have this kind of blue hue over it when it comes to just whacking the preset on. But what that actually allows us to do then is to increase the temperature of the image overall. And so that balances out that blueness, and it actually gives a really rich tone in the highlights. And so that's in the skin tones. And that's why a lot of our images look quite warm and creamy overall, because the temperature is really quite high. And so we've worked the white balance and balanced it off with some split toning. And also we've done our hues and our saturations of those hues and the camera calibration, all kind of in balance to get the skin tones how we want. So it's not just one thing of like, desaturating the oranges to get the creamy skin tones or whatever. It's a balance of those different factors. And so that's our main Chasewild preset that we use and that we sold online and that a lot of people use nowadays. Does that. And so, it's not just necessarily a preset you can whack on there and it just looks like a Chasewild photo. You've got to have a little bit of knowledge on how to shoot in that kind of light, and then how to use the temperature to balance it all out.
Yeah, that is some technology. There's a lot sort of trickier in terms of what I had potentially imagined. How did you come up with that? What sort of, how did you figure that out?
Honestly, it's a bit of iteration over time. I think our editing started off a lot more basic, just, with a tone curve to get the contrast kind of how we want to, and then searching for more tones and searching for something that felt a little bit better. You start playing around with a few of the sliders, and then, we discovered, the split toning, we can put some blue in there. Oh, that's quite a cool look, but it's a bit too blue. Let's try this. Let's put this orange saturation up, and that doesn't quite work. What about the temperature? And a little bit of trial and error, to be honest, but also just curiosity and knowing the Lightroom tools back to front and knowing the capabilities of them. And I think knowing this kind of thought of balance is quite an important concept too. Once I began to think about that, I really could manipulate an image to get it how I want. And even in different lights, sometimes the same formula of the balance doesn't quite work as well. So maybe I do need more orange saturation and less temperature in this kind of situation for this image. So yeah, there's no magic fix, I guess, except for learning Lightroom back to front and trying a lot of things and being inspired by a lot of things, and then, having those influence you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with so many people downloading not just your presets, but presets in general, the idea of having presets online for people to download, and that whole thing being so popular, both with photo and video and everyone, what is it about that post-processing, workflow, and specifically with colors and stuff, and Lightroom and all the different tools in it? What do you think about that is so complicated for people that they're having to reach for things like presets and stuff, and even then being frustrated with that process because they can't quite figure it out, or can't quite get the presets to look right? Why do you think that's such a difficult area of the photographic process for photographers?
Yeah, sure, man. Sure. I think presets are both good and bad depending on your attitude towards them. I think presets, if you're just looking for a shortcut, and you just want a one-click preset that's gonna magically make your business have this amazing aesthetic that everyone's gonna love, probably not gonna happen with just buying a preset. So presets are good, but their attitude towards it is not really the right one, and it's not going to help you. But yeah, presets I think inherently are great because they can really take the lid off how Lightroom works and how a photographer gets the balance between the different aspects of Lightroom in order to achieve their look. So they're great to buy as a bit of a starting point for yourself. They're great to buy so you can learn the different aspects of Lightroom, and they're great to give you a bit of confidence with your photos as well. After you've made your tweaks and done it in a way that you personally love, as a new photographer, you have a little bit more confidence knowing that this is something similar to what I guess other people are doing with their tone curves and their hues and all of this kind of stuff. And so, I think the way that we released our preset a couple of years ago, looking back on it now, probably wasn't quite the right process. We actually put out the preset that we actually use and still mostly use. We've probably tweaked it a little bit since then for people to be able to buy. And we were seeing people who were using it in interesting ways and maybe using it in the kind of light that we would tweak the heck out of it because it wasn't necessarily made for that kind of light. But hopefully it allowed a bunch of photographers to see some of the things that we did to create the look that we did, with split toning and clarity and shadows and different things like that. So I think the preset game, they're everywhere online at the moment, but I think it's ready and ripe for a little bit of reimagination around it, and reimagining a bit of education around editing and how to use presets and color. So I'm definitely looking into that at the moment, with some new stuff that I'm starting.
Nice. And is there a specific area or areas of Lightroom that you feel like people don't fully understand? Is there there's kind of like Lightroom basics in terms of like doing like tone curves, and even then like split toning, and then you get into like hue shifting and adjusting like saturation on specific hues and stuff. But is beyond that, like, is there sort of those next steps further to go deeper and deeper into Lightroom to keep manipulating color the way you guys have found?
Yeah, and it's definitely still a learning process for me, even now. Like, I think it's something that doesn't stop. But I think, I think at a basic level, people still don't quite understand how tone curves work, don't know how to manipulate a tone curve to get a look that they want. There's so many things you can utilize that I see people not utilizing at all. Like beyond tone curve, like your hues and saturations, you don't have to leave those the same all the time, or you can manipulate those and they really change an image a lot. Split toning, like you just mentioned, it's a powerful way to give a look overall to an image and then balance it in different ways. And then right down the bottom of Lightroom is the camera calibration sliders. And they're actually a really powerful way to give a look to your image overall as well. And I don't see that many people like playing around with those and having a look into what they control and what they do. So there's definitely go and check out an area of Lightroom that you haven't really messed around with and see how it affects your image. Just have a play around, and you might begin to find something that you like. I think almost most of the areas are a little bit undiscovered for people, and they rely on a preset that they bought somewhere else to control those for them. But they should take the preset as a cue to learn how those parts work in Lightroom. And I guess there's a new feature to Lightroom that's been around for about a year now, but that's allowing, you can make profiles now that allow you to adjust the intensity of the profile in the profiles panel. And profiles are just like a whole nother kettle of fish when it comes to your editing. And a lot of people just rely on the standard Adobe color profiles, but you can get really powerful looks by actually building your own profiles. And you build profiles in Camera Raw, and you can export them to be able to be used in Lightroom. And that's something that I'm looking into, putting out some education courses and some stuff for people to look into online about how they can utilize profiles and make their own and understand how that works.
Interesting. Yeah, nice, man. That's really cool. Yeah, it definitely seems like there's a lot more room to explore in that kind of post processing side of things. And I guess kind of as we're sort of wrapping things up, a lot of this conversation has been mostly directed at photographers who've relatively established and they're familiar with all the camera settings and stuff. But to sort of speak a bit now to a bit more of a sort of beginner and amateur audience who are at the very beginnings, might not even be playing around with Lightroom. The idea of colors not being, say, true to life. Because, as we get more and more along in our professional photographic journey, we manipulate our colors more and more and more and more. For it's some people are sort of purists in the sense that they don't feel like colors should be manipulated beyond being true to life, especially with around Instagram filters and that whole like hashtag no filter thing. There's almost a pride in colors being true to life, but like color manipulation has been around since beginning of photography, since film photography and everything. So I guess what would you say to a group of photographers early in their journey who are sort of set on the idea of their colors and stuff being like staying true to life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and a great conversation to have. I think true to life photography is definitely a thing, and I think all of this stuff is partly just preference and I guess just what people like. And if people want to have like super perfectly what they think are perfectly accurate colors that are true to life, then like all power to them. Like go for it. That's great. It's a look. It's an aesthetic. It's a choice that, you know, that's just what they like, and that's fine. But for me, a lot of times photos that just look exactly how you might see them at midday on a sunny day is not something that really makes you feel. And we're in the art game, you know, we're not in necessarily the exact color, recreation game, like making it look exactly how you see it in your eye. We're creating pieces of art. We're creating something to draw you in and to make you feel, to take you back to a moment. And so color manipulation and editing is just a tool to help you do that. There are certain colors and there are certain things that have stood the test of time. Like I know, there's certain film stocks that are really iconic in terms of the way they represent color, and that is kind of iconic in our culture. That's just how we see those kind of colors. And so I think for me and for Chasewild, like we do a lot of color manipulation, but I think that, we'd still like to say we're influenced by those things, those film stocks, those iconic kind of colors. And, we're still taking our reference point from them, and hopefully we're not going too far off into, color grades that are like completely left field or anything like that. I think the colors that we're using are still in the gamut of how we actually, see things and experience things. So, it might not be the true to life kind of saturated looking colors that true to life photography is, but it's in reference to how we see color in our culture for sure.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to finish on. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Cam, coming on the very first show of Canon Conversations. If you would all like to see more of Cam and James's work, there'll be links below for all of that. And I'd love if you all drop a comment below if you enjoyed the episode. Who would you like to see on next? What topics would you like covered? This show is all about interacting with and growing the community here. So, get down in the comments and we'll see you there. Thanks again, Cam. I really enjoyed having it on the show. It was great to talk about an area of photography that I think, like we said, a lot of people come a bit late to the game too.
Yeah, man. Oh, it's been a pleasure to chat, and thanks for your great questions. And I hope everyone is inspired to go and check out Lightroom a bit further and think about their colors a bit more. And we're, like I said, we're working on a few things to really help photographers and grow in this area. So there's a bunch of stuff to be able to check out on our website and some of our links. So we hope they do that.
Wicked. Fantastic, man. All right. Well, that'll do us. And until next time, see ya.